my granddaughter, couldn't speak for 3 years. During a routine checkup, she was alone with the doctor for less than a minute. The doctor rushed out to me and whispered, "Ma'am, this isn't a medical problem." Before I could ask why, my daughter-in-law walked back in, holding something in her hands. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The waiting room at Riverside Medical Center smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, watching Cynthia, my 7-year-old granddaughter, color in a worn activity book. Her small fingers gripped the crayon with concentration, her dark hair falling across her face like a curtain between herself and the world. 3 years. 3 years since anyone had heard her voice. I'm Corinne Miller, 64 years old, a retired elementary school teacher who once believed she understood children better than most. But Cynthia had become a mystery I couldn't solve, a puzzle with pieces that didn't fit together no matter how I arranged them. My son Daniel and his wife Rebecca had moved into my farmhouse 2 years ago, claiming they needed help with Cynthia's condition. The doctors had diagnosed selective mutism, they said, a psychological condition. Nothing to worry about. She'd speak when she was ready. But I worried. That's what grandmothers do. Cynthia Miller. A nurse appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. I stood reaching for Cynthia's hand, but she pulled away, as she always did, and walked ahead of me with that strange, stiff gait she'd developed. Not quite natural, too controlled. Dr. Sarah Mitchell greeted us in the examination room, her kind eyes crinkling at the corners as she knelt to Cynthia's level. "Hello, sweetheart. Remember me from last time?" Cynthia stared at the wall. "Mrs. Miller, I'll need to do a quick physical examination," Dr. Mitchell said, standing. "Standard procedure. It'll just take a few minutes." "Of course." I moved toward the door, but Cynthia's head snapped toward me, her eyes wide with something that looked like panic. My chest tightened. "It's okay, honey," I said softly. "I'll be right outside." In the hallway, I pressed my palm against the cool wall and closed my eyes. The fluorescent lights hummed above me, mixing with the distant sound of a phone ringing at the nurse's station. I'd been bringing Cynthia to specialists for months now. Speech therapists, child psychologists, neurologists. Each visit ended the same way. Sympathetic looks, vague recommendations, and Rebecca's tight-lipped insistence that we were doing everything possible. But were we? Less than a minute had passed when the examination room door burst open. Dr. C. Mitchell stood there, her professional composure cracked, her face pale. "Mrs. Miller." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Could you step in here, please?" Alone. My heart hammered against my ribs as I followed her back inside. Cynthia sat on the examination table, swinging her legs, apparently absorbed in counting the tiles on the floor. Dr. Mitchell closed the door and turned to me, her voice low and urgent. "Ma'am, this isn't a medical problem. I don't understand." "What do you mean?" She glanced at Cynthia, then back at me. "Your granddaughter." The hallway door swung open again, and Rebecca swept in like a cold front, her designer handbag swinging from her shoulder, her expression arranged in that perfect mask of maternal concern she wore so well. "Sorry I'm late." She didn't look sorry. She looked furious, though she hid it behind a smile. Traffic was terrible. Dr. Mitchell's mouth snapped shut. The moment, whatever it had been, was gone. "We were just finishing up," the doctor said, her tone carefully neutral now. "Professional. Cynthia's physical health is excellent." "Of course it is." Rebecca moved to Cynthia's side, placing a possessive hand on her shoulder. "I take very good care of my daughter." Something in the way she said it made my skin crawl. Rebecca pulled a manila folder from her bag and laid it on the examination table with a sharp tap. "These are Cynthia's most recent evaluations from Dr. Hartman at the Children's Behavioral Institute. He's a leading specialist in selective mutism. His findings are quite clear." I reached for the folder, but Rebecca's hand shot out, covering it. "Perhaps we should discuss this at home, Corinne." Her smile never reached her eyes. "Dr. Mitchell is busy, I'm sure." Dr. Mitchell looked like she wanted to say something. Her jaw worked, her fingers curled into fists at her sides, but she only nodded. "If you have any questions, Mrs. Miller, please don't hesitate to call me. Directly. The emphasis on that last word hung in the air. Rebecca gathered Cynthia quickly, efficiently, like someone collecting a package. "Thank you, doctor. We'll see you in 6 months." "Actually," Dr. Mitchell started, but Rebecca was already guiding Cynthia toward the door. "Come along, Corinne." In the parking lot, Rebecca buckled Cynthia into her car seat with practiced movements while I stood by my old Chevy, the folder Rebecca had shoved into my hands feeling heavy as lead. "You can read it at home," Rebecca said, not looking at me. "It's all very technical. Dr. Hartman explains that Cynthia's condition is permanent. She may never speak again. We need to accept that and stop dragging her to appointments that only upset her." She didn't seem upset. Rebecca's head snapped up, her eyes flashing. "You don't live with her every day, Corinne. You don't understand the challenges." But I did live with her. We all lived in my farmhouse, the sprawling 200-year-old home my late husband Thomas and I had lovingly restored. The home where I'd raised Daniel, where I'd planned to grow old in peace. Instead, 2 years ago, Daniel and Rebecca had arrived with Cynthia, their suitcases, and their secrets. "Financial difficulties," Daniel had said, unable to meet my eyes. "Just temporary," Rebecca had added with that smile. Nothing about their stay felt temporary anymore. They'd taken over the master bedroom. Rebecca had rearranged my kitchen. Daniel worked long hours at some vague tech job that kept him away from dawn until dusk. And Cynthia, silent, watchful Cynthia, moved through the house like a ghost. "I'll follow you home," I said. Rebecca's expression hardened. "Actually, Cynthia and I have some errands to run. We'll be back for dinner." She drove away before I could respond, leaving me standing in the parking lot with that folder in my hands and Dr. Mitchell's words echoing in my head. This isn't a medical problem. Back at the farmhouse, I sat at my kitchen table. The same oak table where I'd taught Daniel his multiplication tables, where Thomas and I had shared 30 years of morning coffee, and opened the folder. The documents inside were impressive. Letterhead from the Children's Behavioral Institute. Dr. Hartman's credentials printed in small type at the bottom. Page after page of clinical observations, diagnostic codes, treatment recommendations. Cynthia's name appeared throughout, along with terms like persistent selective mutism, psychological trauma response, and guarded prognosis. But something felt wrong. I'd been a teacher for 35 years. I'd read thousands of reports, evaluations, and assessments. I knew how they were supposed to look, how they were supposed to feel. These documents were too perfect, too clean, the language too generic. I pulled out my laptop, a gift from Daniel last Christmas, which I'd learned to use despite my initial resistance, and typed Dr. Hartman Children's Behavioral Institute into the search engine. The institute existed. Dr. Hartman existed. But when I clicked through to his profile, something made me pause. His areas of expertise included anxiety disorders, ADHD, and autism spectrum conditions. Selective mutism wasn't mentioned anywhere. My phone rang, making me jump. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. "Hey, Mom. Rebecca said you seemed upset after the appointment." "I'm not upset. I'm concerned." Dr. Mitchell said something strange. "What did she say?" His tone had shifted, become guarded. "She said Cynthia's silence isn't a medical problem." Silence on the line. Then, "Mom, Dr. Mitchell isn't a specialist. Dr. Hartman has been very clear about Cynthia's diagnosis. We need to trust the experts." Then why did Dr. Mitchell look so worried? "I don't know. Maybe she— Look, I can't talk about this now. I'm at work. We'll discuss it tonight, okay?" He hung up before I could respond. I sat there, staring at the phone, at the laptop screen, at the folder with its 2 perfect documents. Something was very wrong. I'd felt it for months, that nagging sensation that I was missing something obvious, something right in front of my face. Cynthia hadn't always been silent. For her first 4 years, she'd been a chatterbox, full of questions and laughter and endless stories. Then, 3 years ago, the words had stopped. Suddenly, completely. "She just needs time," Rebecca had said. But 3 years was more than time. 3 years was a pattern. I thought about Dr. Mitchell's face, the urgency in her eyes, the way she'd started to tell me something before Rebecca arrived, the way she'd emphasized that I should call her directly. I thought about Rebecca's reaction, the speed with which she'd produced that folder, as if she'd been expecting someone to question Cynthia's diagnosis. I thought about Daniel's evasiveness, the way he avoided talking about Cynthia's condition, the way he was never home anymore. And I thought about Cynthia herself, quiet, careful Cynthia, who flinched when Rebecca touched her, who watched everything with those old, sad eyes, who hadn't spoken a word in 3 years. The sun was setting, painting the farmhouse kitchen in shades of amber and shadow. I closed the folder and made a decision. I was going to find out the truth, whatever it took, whatever I discovered, whatever it cost me. I was going to find out why my granddaughter was really silent, and I was going to make her speak again. The next morning, I woke before dawn, an old habit from my teaching days. The farmhouse creaked and settled around me, familiar sounds that usually brought comfort. Today they felt ominous, as if the house itself was holding secrets. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, watching the sun rise over the fields. My late husband Thomas had planted those oak trees along the property line 30 years ago. He'd been gone 5 years now, but I still felt his presence in every corner of this house. What would he say about all this? About Daniel's evasiveness? Rebecca's control? Cynthia's silence? He'd tell me to trust my instincts. Thomas always did. At 7:30, I heard movement upstairs. Rebecca descended first, already dressed in crisp linen pants and a silk blouse, her hair perfectly styled. She paused when she saw me. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep." I sipped my coffee, keeping my voice casual. "I was thinking about calling Dr. Mitchell. She seemed concerned yesterday." Rebecca's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "That won't be necessary. I've already scheduled a follow-up with Dr. Hartman." "When?" "Next month." She poured herself coffee, her movements precise. "Corinne, I know you mean well, but constantly questioning Cynthia's diagnosis isn't helpful. It confuses her." "Does it? She seemed fine yesterday until..." "Until what?" Rebecca turned to face me, her voice sharp. "Until you started treating a routine appointment like an interrogation?" Before I could respond, Cynthia appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas. Her eyes moved between us, reading the tension in the air. Children always know when adults are fighting, even when we pretend we're not. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said softly. Cynthia walked past me without acknowledgement and sat at the table. Rebecca immediately placed a bowl of cereal in front of her, the movements practiced, controlled. Cynthia began eating with mechanical precision, one spoonful at a time, never looking up. Daniel came down 20 minutes later, already in his work clothes, his tie loosely knotted. He kissed Rebecca's cheek, ruffled Cynthia's hair, she didn't react, and grabbed a travel mug of coffee. "Running late," he mumbled. "Daniel, wait." I stood. "Can we talk? About yesterday?" "Mom, I really can't. Big presentation this morning." He was already heading for the door. "It'll just take a minute." "Tonight? We'll talk tonight." The door closed behind him before I could protest. I looked at Rebecca, who was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Satisfaction? Warning? "He works very hard," she said. "Supporting this family isn't easy." The implication hung between us. In your house, eating your food, living on your generosity. After Rebecca left to take Cynthia to what she called therapeutic activities, I sat in the quiet house and made a decision. If no one would give me answers, I'd find them myself. I called Dr. Mitchell's office first. "Riverside Medical Center, how may I help you?" "Yes, this is Corinne Miller. I'd like to speak with Dr. Mitchell, please. It's about my granddaughter, Cynthia Miller." "One moment." A pause, then. "Dr. Mitchell is with patients all morning, but she left a note that if you called, she'd return the call during her lunch break. Can she reach you at this number?" "Yes, thank you." I hung up, feeling a small surge of hope. Dr. Mitchell had expected me to call. That meant something. While I waited, I decided to search Cynthia's room. I felt guilty about it, invading a child's privacy, but desperation overrode propriety. If there was something to find, I needed to find it. The room that had once been my sewing room was now painted pale pink, decorated with princesses and unicorns. Cynthia's bed was made with hospital corners, her toys arranged with military precision. Nothing out of place, nothing personal. That's what struck me. The room looked like a showroom, not a child's space. Where were the scattered books, the drawings taped to the walls, the collections of rocks and shells that children accumulate? I opened her closet. Clothes hung in order by color and type. On the top shelf, I found a plastic storage bin. Inside, coloring books, all used, every picture colored within the lines with the same careful precision. No creative scribbles, no wild color choices. Just perfect, careful, controlled coloring. At the bottom of the bin, I found a small notebook. My heart raced as I opened it. The pages were filled with writing, but not Cynthia's. The handwriting was adult, precise. Rebecca's handwriting. Page after page of instructions. Morning routine. Wake at 7 day. Dress independently. No assistance needed. Breakfast, 1 bowl cereal. No talking at table. If grandmother asks questions, ignore. If grandmother insists, leave room. Response protocol. No eye contact with grandmother for more than 2 seconds. No physical affection. No verbal communication under any circumstances. Punishment escalation. Level 1. Removal of privileges. Level 2. Isolation period. Level 3. The rest was scratched out, unreadable. My hands shook. This wasn't about selective mutism. This was training, conditioning, control. I heard a car in the driveway. Panic flooded through me. I shoved the notebook back into the bin, pushed the bin onto the shelf, and hurried out of the room, my heart pounding. Rebecca came through the front door, Cynthia trailing behind her. They were back hours earlier than I'd expected. Corinne. Rebecca's voice was ice. Were you upstairs? I was cleaning. The lie came automatically. I noticed Cynthia's room needed dusting. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. She walked past me and up the stairs, Cynthia following like a shadow. I heard the door to Cynthia's room open, then silence. Minutes passed. When Rebecca came back down, her expression was composed, but I saw anger in the set of her jaw. Please don't go into Cynthia's room without asking. She has sensory sensitivities. Changes in her environment upset her. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. There are a lot of things you don't realize. Rebecca moved to the kitchen, began unpacking groceries with sharp, aggressive movements. Cynthia needs routine, consistency, structure, not well-meaning interference. The words stung because they were designed to. I started to respond, but my phone rang. Dr. Mitchell's number. Excuse me. I stepped into my bedroom and closed the door. Dr. Mitchell? Mrs. Miller, thank you for calling back. Her voice was low, urgent. I don't have much time, but I need to tell you. What I saw yesterday concerns me deeply. What did you see? When I examined Cynthia, I asked her simple questions. Can you nod yes or no? Can you point to what hurts? Standard pediatric assessment. Mrs. Miller, she can communicate. She nodded. She pointed. She responded appropriately to everything I asked. But the moment I suggested we bring you back in and show you, she shut down completely. She looked terrified. My throat tightened. Terrified of what? I think she's afraid of what will happen if she speaks. Or if she's seen speaking. Mrs. Miller, I've been a pediatrician for 20 years. I've seen selective mutism. This isn't that. This is something else. Her mother, my daughter-in-law, has documents from a specialist. I looked up those documents. I called the Children's Behavioral Institute this morning. Dr. Hartman did see Cynthia once, 3 years ago, for an initial consultation. He diagnosed mild anxiety, recommended play therapy. He never diagnosed selective mutism, and he never wrote those reports in your folder. The room spun. What are you saying? I'm saying those documents might be falsified. I'm saying someone may be deliberately keeping Cynthia silent. And Mrs. Miller, her voice dropped even lower. I'm saying I'm calling Child Protective Services today. I have to. I'm a mandatory reporter. Wait. Panic flooded through me. If you call CPS, Rebecca will know someone reported her. She'll what? I didn't know how to finish that sentence. What would Rebecca do? What was she capable of? Please, I said. Give me a few days. Let me figure out what's happening. If you call CPS now, they'll investigate, Rebecca will lawyer up, and Cynthia could end up in foster care while they sort it out. Mrs. Miller, please. I'm her grandmother. I live with her. Let me protect her my way first. If I can't, if I find something worse, I'll call CPS myself. The silence stretched. Finally. 72 hours. That's all I can give you. If I don't hear from you, or if I see any sign Cynthia is in danger, I'm making the call. Thank you. I hung up and sat on my bed, the weight of what I'd learned crushing down on me. The notebook upstairs, Dr. Mitchell's observations, the falsified documents. It all pointed to one terrible conclusion. Rebecca was deliberately silencing Cynthia. But why? What was she hiding? What was she protecting? And more importantly, was Daniel involved, or was he as much a victim of Rebecca's manipulation as Cynthia? I heard footsteps in the hallway. Rebecca's voice, cold and controlled. Corinne, we need to talk. I opened my bedroom door. Rebecca stood there, Cynthia beside her, both of them watching me with expressions I couldn't read. I found something in Cynthia's room, Rebecca said quietly. The bin on her closet shelf was moved. The notebook inside was disturbed. My mouth went dry. You went through Cynthia's things. Not a question. An accusation. I was looking for what? Evidence? Proof I'm a bad mother? Rebecca's voice remained quiet, but the fury beneath it was volcanic. That notebook is private. It contains therapeutic strategies recommended by Cynthia's doctors. Strategies you wouldn't understand because you're not trained in behavioral psychology. Those aren't therapeutic strategies, Rebecca. Those are instructions for keeping a child silent. The words were out before I could stop them. The air between us crackled with tension. Rebecca's expression didn't change, but something dark flickered in her eyes. Daniel was right. You've become paranoid. Perhaps it's time we discussed living arrangements. This is my house. Yes, but Cynthia is our daughter. And if you're going to undermine her treatment, create instability, violate her privacy, then perhaps it's not a healthy environment for her. Perhaps we need to consider moving out. Perhaps we need to consider limiting your access to Cynthia. The threat was clear. I could either back down, or I could lose my granddaughter completely. Cynthia stood there through all of it, silent and still, watching us with those old, sad eyes. And for just a moment, just a heartbeat, I saw her hand move. A tiny gesture, hidden at her side where Rebecca couldn't see. She was trying to tell me something. She wanted me to keep fighting. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed listening to the sounds of the old farmhouse, the wind rattling the windows, the furnace clicking on and off, the creak of floorboards as someone moved around upstairs. Rebecca and Daniel's bedroom was directly above mine. I heard their voices, muffled but urgent, arguing. At 2 a.m, I heard footsteps on the stairs. I got up quietly and cracked open my bedroom door. Daniel was in the kitchen, illuminated by the refrigerator light, drinking milk straight from the carton. He looked exhausted, defeated. Daniel, I whispered. He jumped, nearly dropping the carton. Mom, you scared me. We need to talk. It's 2 a.m. Then it's the perfect time. Rebecca's asleep. I gestured to the kitchen table. Please. He hesitated, then nodded. We sat across from each other in the darkness, the only light coming from the stove clock. Your wife threatened to take Cynthia away from me today, I said quietly. Daniel rubbed his face. She told me, Mom, you went through Cynthia's things. You violated her privacy. I found a notebook full of instructions on how to keep Cynthia silent, training protocols, punishment levels. His jaw tightened. Those are therapeutic techniques. You don't understand? Then help me understand. Because Dr. Mitchell called me today. She said Cynthia can communicate. She said the documents from Dr. Hartman might be falsified. Daniel's face went pale in the dim light. She said what? The Institute confirmed they only saw Cynthia once, 2 years ago. Dr. Hartman never diagnosed selective mutism. He never wrote those reports. Rebecca fabricated them. That's impossible. I've seen the documents. I've read... He stopped, realization dawning on his face. No. No, Mom, Rebecca wouldn't what? Wouldn't lie? Wouldn't manipulate? Daniel, look at me. When was the last time you actually took Cynthia to see Dr. Hartman? Silence. When was the last time you were present at any of her appointments? More silence. Rebecca handles all of that, he finally said. I'm at work. She takes care of Cynthia's medical care. She's always been the one who... His voice cracked. Oh, God. What is it? He stood abruptly, paced to the window. The job. My job. Mom, I've been working insane hours for 2 years. Rebecca said we needed the money for Cynthia's treatments. All those specialists, the therapy sessions, the behavioral consultants. She showed me the bills. Thousands of dollars every month. But if there were no real appointments, then where's the money going? He turned to face me, and in the dim light, I saw fear in my son's eyes. Mom, what has she been doing? Before I could answer, we heard movement upstairs. Daniel's eyes widened in panic. She can't know we talked. If she thinks I'm questioning her, if she thinks... What are you afraid of? I have to go. He hurried back upstairs, leaving me alone in the darkness. I sat there for a long time, pieces clicking into place. Rebecca controlled everything: Cynthia's care, Daniel's schedule, access to information. She'd isolated them both, kept Daniel working constantly while she maintained total control over Cynthia. But why? What was she gaining from keeping a 7-year-old silent? The next morning, I waited until Rebecca left with Cynthia for another appointment. The moment their car disappeared down the driveway, I went back upstairs. This time I wasn't searching Cynthia's room. I was searching Rebecca's. The master bedroom, my former bedroom, had been completely transformed. Rebecca's aesthetic was cold, minimalist. Nothing personal, nothing revealing. I checked the dresser drawers, clothes, organized by type and color, the nightstands, books on child psychology, parenting magazines. Then I saw Rebecca's laptop on the desk by the window. My hands trembled as I opened it. Password protected, of course. I tried Cynthia's birthday, Daniel's birthday. Nothing. Then, on impulse, I tried the date they'd moved into my house. The screen unlocked. I navigated to her email, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. The inbox was meticulously organized into folders: medical, financial, legal, personal. I clicked on financial first. What I found made my blood run cold. Bank statements, dozens of them. Transfers from Daniel's account. Our joint account, actually. The one I'd added him to when they'd moved in so he could help with household expenses. Every month for 2 years, large sums had been transferred out. Not thousands, tens of thousands. But they weren't going to medical providers. They were going to an account I didn't recognize. An account in Rebecca's name alone. I clicked on the legal folder. Documents appeared, court filings, guardianship petitions. And then I saw it. A draft petition for legal guardianship of Cynthia, excluding parental rights, filed by Rebecca, citing Corinne Miller's deteriorating mental capacity and inappropriate interference in medical care. She was planning to have me declared incompetent. She was planning to take Cynthia, claim I was unfit, and the medical folder. I almost didn't want to open it, but I had to know. Inside were the real medical records, Cynthia's actual medical history. I scanned through them, my teaching background helping me understand the clinical language. Cynthia had been a normal, healthy, verbal child until age 4. Then, a notation about a fall, emergency room visit, contusions consistent with... I stopped breathing. The words on the screen blurred. Contusions consistent with physical restraint. Bruising around the upper arms. Doctor's note: mother reports child fell downstairs. Injury pattern inconsistent with reported mechanism. CPS referral made. CPS had been called 4 years ago, but nothing had come of it. Why? I scrolled further. Another document. A letter from a family court. Case dismissed. Insufficient evidence. Mother's testimony deemed credible. And then, 2 weeks after that dismissal, Cynthia stopped speaking entirely. Not gradually. Not through some psychological condition. She stopped speaking the day after Rebecca had been cleared by Child Protective Services. My stomach churned. Rebecca had hurt Cynthia. CPS had investigated. Rebecca had gotten away with it. And then she'd silenced Cynthia permanently to ensure she could never tell anyone what had really happened. The training, the protocols, the false medical documents. It wasn't about selective mutism. It was about control. It was about keeping Cynthia from ever speaking again, from ever being able to testify, from ever being able to tell the truth. I heard a car door slam outside. Panic flooded through me. I frantically closed the browser windows, shut the laptop, tried to put everything back exactly as I'd found it. I ran to my bedroom just as I heard footsteps on the porch. But it wasn't Rebecca. It was Daniel, home in the middle of the workday, his face ashen. "Mom." His voice was hollow. "I left work early. I called the Children's Behavioral Institute myself, spoke directly to Dr. Hartman. He remembers Cynthia. He remembers filing a CPS report 3 years ago. He said Rebecca never brought Cynthia back after that first visit. I know. Daniel, I found she's been lying. About everything. The treatments, the specialists, the diagnosis, all of it." He sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. "How could I have been so blind? She's very good at manipulation. She isolated you, kept you working constantly so you couldn't see what was happening." I sat beside him. "But Daniel, it's worse than we thought. I found court documents. She's planning to have me declared incompetent so she can take Cynthia away." His head snapped up. "What?" "And I found Cynthia's real medical records. 4 years ago, Cynthia was injured. The hospital suspected abuse. CPS investigated but closed the case. Cynthia stopped speaking immediately after." Daniel's face went gray. "No? You're saying, Rebecca, that she hurt Cynthia? That she's been keeping her silent to cover it up?" "I'm saying Cynthia is terrified. I'm saying Rebecca has spent 3 years conditioning her never to speak. And I'm saying we're running out of time. Dr. Mitchell gave me 72 hours before she calls CPS again. That was yesterday. We have to do something. We have to—" He stood, paced. "We need proof. Evidence. If we just accuse Rebecca without evidence, she'll deny everything. She'll use those fake documents. She'll claim we're the unstable ones." He was right. Rebecca had been building her case for years. She had files, documents, a paper trail of lies. We had suspicions and a laptop I'd accessed without permission. "Daniel, where is Cynthia right now? Where did Rebecca take her?" "She said they were going to see a speech therapist in Harrisburg. That's a 4-hour round trip. They won't be back until—" He checked his watch. "Until around 5. It was noon. We had 5 hours. We need to call the police," I said. "And tell them what? That we think my wife is abusing our daughter based on old medical records and a notebook? Mom, we don't have enough. They'll interview Rebecca, she'll charm them, show them her fake documents, and then we'll have lost any chance of protecting Cynthia. Then what do we do?" Daniel's expression hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "We need to make Cynthia speak. If she can tell someone, a doctor, a police officer, anyone, what really happened, Rebecca can't hide anymore. But Cynthia won't speak. Rebecca has conditioned her. What if Rebecca isn't there? What if it's just us, just family? Mom, you taught children for 35 years. If anyone can reach Cynthia, it's you." I thought about Cynthia's tiny gesture yesterday, hidden from Rebecca. The way she'd tried to tell me to keep fighting. She wanted to speak. She wanted to be free. She was just terrified of the consequences. "There's something else," Daniel said quietly. "I checked our joint account this morning. Rebecca has been draining it systematically for 2 years. She has over $200,000 in her private account. I think she's been planning to leave, to take Cynthia and disappear before anyone could stop her. When? I don't know. But Mom, if we're going to act, it has to be now. Today, before she realizes we know." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Miller, this is Dr. Mitchell. Have you made any progress? Time is running out." I showed Daniel the message. He met my eyes. "What do we do?" I thought about my granddaughter, silent and afraid. I thought about Rebecca's manipulation, the years of lies, the systematic abuse disguised as medical care. I thought about my son, trapped in a marriage built on deception, and I made a decision. We document everything. We photograph those medical records, the financial statements, the court documents. We create our own evidence file. Then we wait for Rebecca to come home, and we confront her. Together, with Cynthia present. I looked at Daniel. We force her hand, and we pray that Cynthia is ready to speak. That's risky, if it goes wrong. If we do nothing, Rebecca wins. She takes Cynthia, disappears with $200,000, and we never see our granddaughter again. I stood. We have 5 hours to prepare. Let's not waste them. We spent the afternoon building our case, photographing every document, every bank statement, every piece of evidence we could find. Daniel called his bank and froze the joint account. I contacted Dr. Mitchell and told her to be ready to come to the house at a moment's notice. At 4:30, we heard Rebecca's car in the driveway. Daniel and I stood in the kitchen, waiting. Our evidence folder sat on the table between us. The front door opened. Rebecca walked in, Cynthia trailing behind her, both of them stopping when they saw us standing there. "Daniel?" Rebecca's voice was puzzled. "What are you doing home?" "We need to talk," he said. "All of us. Now." Rebecca's eyes moved to the folder on the table. For just a moment, her careful mask slipped, and I saw something cold and calculating beneath. About what? Rebecca's eyes moved between Daniel and me, calculating. Cynthia stood frozen in the doorway, her small hand still gripping the doorknob, her gaze fixed on the folder. "About the truth," Daniel said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "About what you've really been doing for the past 3 years. Rebecca's expression shifted into concern so smoothly it was like watching an actress slip into character. "Daniel, you're scaring me. What's going on? Did something happen at work?" "I left work at noon," he said. "I called the Children's Behavioral Institute. I spoke with Dr. Hartman directly." The concern flickered, just for a second, but I saw it. "That's wonderful," Rebecca said carefully. "I've been trying to get you more involved in Cynthia's care." "What did he say?" "He said he only saw Cynthia once, 4 years ago. He said he filed a CPS report because Cynthia had injuries consistent with physical restraint." Daniel's voice grew harder. "He said you never brought her back after the investigation was closed." Rebecca laughed. It was a light, confused sound. "That's ridiculous. We've been seeing Dr. Hartman regularly for 2 years. Daniel, there must be some mistake. Maybe you spoke with the wrong person or—" "I have the real medical records." I gestured to the folder. "I found them on your laptop, along with the bank statements showing you've embezzled over $200,000. And the guardianship petition where you plan to have me declared incompetent." The mask dropped completely. Rebecca's face went cold, her eyes hard as ice. "You went through my personal computer. That's illegal. That's a violation of privacy." "So is forging medical documents," Daniel said. "So is abusing our daughter. I have never laid a hand on Cynthia." Rebecca's voice was sharp, controlled. "And you have no proof that I have. What you have is a bunch of old records taken out of context and accessed illegally. Any lawyer will have them thrown out." She was right, and she knew it. I saw the confidence in her posture, the way she was already planning her defense. "Cynthia fell 4 years ago," Rebecca continued, her voice softening into that reasonable maternal tone she used so well. "It was an accident, a terrible accident. Yes, the hospital overreacted. Yes, CPS investigated. But they found nothing because there was nothing to find. I was cleared completely. And then Cynthia stopped speaking," I said, "because she was traumatized by the investigation, by having strangers question her, examine her, treat her like a victim when she wasn't. The doctors said the investigation itself caused psychological harm." Rebecca moved into the kitchen, positioning herself between us and Cynthia. "Everything I've done since then has been to protect her, to help her heal. The therapeutic protocols, the behavioral strategies, they're all designed to give her a safe, structured environment." "The protocols that tell her never to speak to me?" I demanded. "The instructions that punish her for making eye contact with her grandmother? Those are boundaries. Children need boundaries, especially traumatized children. You've been undermining her treatment since we moved in. Constantly questioning, constantly interfering. Cynthia needs consistency, not confusion. She was good. Even knowing the truth, I could hear how convincing she sounded, how reasonable, how concerned. Daniel stepped forward. What about the money, Rebecca? $200,000 transferred from our joint account to your private account. How is that protecting Cynthia? That money is for Cynthia's future care, for treatments, for specialists, for when she's older and needs more intensive therapy. Rebecca's voice rose slightly. I've been the only one fighting for our daughter, the only one sacrificing, planning, protecting, while you've been focused on your career and your mother has been sabotaging everything I've tried to do. You're lying, Daniel said flatly. Rebecca's expression hardened. Get out of my way. This is my house, I said, and Cynthia isn't going anywhere until we get answers. You can't keep us here against our will. That's kidnapping. Rebecca pulled out her phone. I'm calling the police. I'm telling them you've both become unstable, that you're making wild accusations, that you're holding my daughter hostage. Go ahead, I said, surprising myself with the calmness in my voice. Call them. We'll show them the evidence. We'll tell them everything. And then we'll let them decide. Rebecca's finger hovered over the phone. She was calculating again, weighing odds. If she called the police, they'd investigate. They'd see the evidence, flawed as it was. They'd ask questions. They'd want to talk to Cynthia. She lowered the phone. Fine. You want to do this? Let's do this properly. She turned to Cynthia, who was still standing motionless by the door. Cynthia, sweetheart, go to your room. Cynthia didn't move. Cynthia. Rebecca's voice sharpened. Room. Now. Still, Cynthia didn't move. She was staring at the folder on the table, her small chest rising and falling rapidly, hyperventilating. Leave her here, Daniel said. She should hear this. She's old enough to understand what's happening. She is 7 years old. She doesn't need to be exposed to this family drama. Rebecca moved toward Cynthia, reaching for her hand. Cynthia stepped back. It was a small movement, barely noticeable, but Rebecca froze. Her hand hung in the air between them. Cynthia? Rebecca's voice held a warning note. Come here. Cynthia took another step back. I said come here. Cynthia shook her head, side to side, slowly, deliberately. The room went silent. In 3 years, Cynthia had never openly defied Rebecca, never refused a direct command. The change in the air was electric. Rebecca's face went pale, then flushed with anger. Cynthia, if you don't come here right now, there will be consequences. Do you understand me? Consequences. Cynthia's eyes welled with tears, but she didn't move. She looked at me, then at Daniel, and I saw a question in her gaze. A desperate plea. Help me. Daniel moved first. He crossed the room and knelt in front of Cynthia, putting himself between her and Rebecca. It's okay, sweetheart. You don't have to be afraid anymore. We know everything. You know nothing, Rebecca hissed. You have theories and suspicions, and illegally obtained documents. You have nothing that would stand up in any court. Then why are you so angry? I asked quietly. If you've done nothing wrong, why are you threatened by our questions? Rebecca spun to face me. Because you're trying to destroy my family. You've resented me from the moment we moved in here. Resented that your son chose me. That Cynthia loves me more than she loves you. That I'm the one making decisions for my daughter instead of letting you play grandmother of the year. Cynthia doesn't love you, Daniel said softly, still kneeling by our granddaughter. She's terrified of you. I've been too blind to see it. But Mom saw it. Dr. Mitchell saw it. Everyone except me saw it. Dr. Mitchell? Rebecca's voice dripped with contempt. That incompetent small-town doctor who spent 5 minutes with Cynthia and thinks she's an expert. I could file a complaint against her for violating patient confidentiality, for making wild accusations without evidence. She didn't make accusations, I said. She made observations. She noticed that Cynthia can communicate, that she chooses not to speak because she's afraid of what will happen if she does. That's absurd. Is it? I moved closer to Cynthia, slowly, carefully, keeping my voice gentle. Cynthia, sweetheart, if you could speak right now, if you knew you were safe, that nothing bad would happen, Would you want to tell us something? Cynthia's gaze locked with mine. Tears spilled down her cheeks. And slowly, so slowly, she nodded. Rebecca lunged forward, but Daniel caught her arm. Don't touch her. She's my daughter. She's a child who's been abused and silenced for 3 years. Daniel's voice shook with rage. And it ends now. Rebecca jerked her arm free, her composure cracking completely. You want to know the truth? Fine. Yes, I created those medical documents. Yes, I've been transferring money. Yes, I've been planning to leave because I knew eventually you'd figure it out. You want to know why? She was unraveling, the careful control dissolving. I held my breath, waiting. Because Cynthia wouldn't stop talking, Rebecca said, her voice rising. After the CPS investigation, after they cleared me, she kept trying to tell people things. Twisted things. Child fantasy. She told her preschool teacher that I was mean to her. She told the neighbor that I made her sit in the closet. Lies. All lies from a 4-year-old's overactive imagination. But people believed her. They looked at me like I was a monster. So you made her stop, I whispered. I taught her that words have consequences. That's speaking out of turn, telling stories, spreading lies. There are consequences for that behavior. I gave her structure, discipline, rules. And yes, eventually she learned to stay quiet, to be respectful, to behave properly. You conditioned her, Daniel said, his voice hollow. You tortured her into silence. I raised her properly. Something neither of you seem capable of understanding. Rebecca grabbed her purse. I'm leaving, and I'm taking Cynthia with me. Try to stop me and I'll file charges. Parental alienation, false imprisonment, slander. I'll make sure neither of you ever sees her again. She moved toward Cynthia, but Cynthia suddenly ran. Not to Rebecca, but to me. She crashed into my arms, sobbing silently, her small body shaking. Cynthia. Rebecca's voice was ice. Come here, right now. Cynthia burrowed deeper into my embrace, her fingers clutching my shirt. Last warning, Cynthia. The little girl pressed her face against my shoulder, and I felt something. A vibration. She was trying to speak. The sounds were caught in her throat. Years of conditioning fighting against desperate need. You don't have to... I started, but Cynthia pulled back, looked at me with fierce determination. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. The sound was barely audible. No! The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Rebecca staggered backward as if she'd been struck. What did you say? Cynthia turned to face her mother, still holding on to me, and spoke again, louder this time. No. You ungrateful little... Rebecca started forward. Daniel stepped between them. That's enough. You're not taking her anywhere. I'm calling the police. I'm calling CPS, and I'm filing for emergency custody and a restraining order. You don't have grounds. We have a child who just spoke for the first time in 3 years to say no to her mother. We have evidence of financial fraud. We have Dr. Mitchell's testimony. We have enough. He pulled out his phone. It's over, Rebecca. Rebecca's face twisted with rage. She grabbed the folder from the table and threw it, papers scattering everywhere. You think you've won? You think this is over? I'll fight you. I'll take everything. The house, the money, Cynthia. I'll prove you're all unfit. I'll make your lives a living nightmare. You already have, I said quietly. She stared at us for a long moment, her chest heaving. Then she smiled. A cold, calculating smile that made my blood run cold. Fine. Keep her. But let me tell you something about your precious granddaughter. She leaned in close, her voice low and venomous. She didn't just stop speaking because of my discipline. She stopped speaking because of what she saw, what she knows. And trust me, once she starts talking, once she tells you everything, you'll wish she'd stayed silent. She turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. The house fell silent except for Cynthia's quiet sobbing. Daniel was already on the phone with the police. I held Cynthia tight, stroking her hair, trying to process Rebecca's final words. Once she tells you everything, what did Cynthia know? What had she seen? What secret was so terrible that Rebecca had spent 3 years keeping her silent? Cynthia pulled back and looked at me. Her mouth opened. She was trying to speak again. "It's okay," I whispered. "You're safe now. Whatever it is, we'll handle it together." She took a shaky breath and whispered 3 words that changed everything. "She killed Daddy." The words echoed in the sudden silence. Daniel froze, his phone still pressed to his ear. I felt Cynthia trembling in my arms, her small voice having unleashed a truth that had been buried for 3 years. "What?" Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. "Cynthia, what did you say?" She looked at him with those old, sad eyes. "She killed Daddy, my real daddy, before you." The room spun. I tightened my grip on Cynthia, my mind racing. Daniel wasn't her biological father. There had been someone before him, someone who was dead. "When?" I managed to ask. "When did this happen, sweetheart?" "I was 4. Before the hospital. Before the questions." Cynthia's voice was hoarse from years of disuse, each word seeming to cause her physical pain. But now that she'd started, the words came faster, tumbling out like water through a broken dam. "We lived in a different house. Daddy was sick. He stayed in bed a lot. Mommy gave him medicine. Daniel had ended his call to the police, his face ashen. Cynthia, take your time. What happened to your daddy? He got sicker. He couldn't get out of bed. Mommy said he had a bad heart, that he was dying, that we had to be quiet so he could rest." Cynthia's voice cracked. "But I heard them fighting. One night I got up to get water and I heard Mommy in Daddy's room. She was angry. She said he was going to ruin everything, that he wouldn't sign the papers, that he was being selfish." My blood ran cold. "What papers, honey?" "I don't know. But Daddy was crying. He said he wouldn't do it, that Mommy couldn't make him. And then—" Cynthia's breathing quickened, her small body going rigid. "And then he made choking sounds. I opened the door and Mommy was holding a pillow over his face. Daniel made a sound like he'd been punched. She saw me," Cynthia continued, tears streaming down her face. "She put the pillow down and Daddy wasn't moving anymore. She came to me and she smiled, but it was a scary smile. She said Daddy was sleeping, that I shouldn't tell anyone what I saw because people wouldn't understand. She said if I told, they'd take me away and put me with strangers who wouldn't love me." "Oh, sweetheart." I pulled her close, my own tears falling. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." The next day doctors came. They took Daddy away. Mommy told everyone his heart stopped, that he died in his sleep. And I didn't say anything because I was scared. Cynthia looked up at me. But then at preschool, I told my teacher that Mommy made Daddy stop breathing. And the teacher told other people, and then the hospital people came and asked me questions, and Mommy got really mad. The CPS investigation. It hadn't been about a fall at all. It had been about Cynthia's disclosure of witnessing her father's murder. "But they didn't believe you," I said gently. Cynthia shook her head. "Mommy told them I had nightmares, that I confused dreams with real life, that I was traumatized by losing my daddy. She cried and said she was trying her best, but I was making up stories for attention. The doctors believed her. They said I needed therapy for grief and fantasy confusion. And after that, she made you stop talking," Daniel said, his voice hollow. "She said words were dangerous, that if I talked, I'd say the wrong thing and get taken away. She made rules, so many rules. If I broke them, I had to sit in the closet, in the dark, for hours." Cynthia's voice dropped to a whisper. "Sometimes a whole day." I felt rage building in my chest, hot and fierce. "When you came to live with us, when Rebecca married Daniel, that's when you moved into this house?" Cynthia nodded. "Mommy said we needed a fresh start. She said Daniel was nice and had a nice mommy with a big house. She said if I was good and stayed quiet, we could stay here forever and be safe." Daniel sank into a chair, his head in his hands. "I met Rebecca at a grief support group. She said she was a widow, that her husband had died of heart failure, that she was struggling to raise Cynthia alone. She was so sad, so vulnerable. I thought—" His voice broke. "I thought I was helping. I thought I was giving them a home, a family. You were her escape plan," I said quietly. "She killed her first husband, got away with it, and needed to disappear into a new identity, a new marriage, a new family, a new town. But why kill him?" Daniel looked up. Why murder Cynthia's father? Cynthia's voice was small. The papers. Mommy wanted Daddy to sign papers about his money. He had a lot of money from his grandpa. But Daddy said Mommy couldn't have it, that it was for me when I grew up. He said he was changing something called a will because Mommy was being mean. Life insurance, inheritance, money. It always came back to money. So she killed him before he could change his will, I said. She inherited everything as his widow. And then she found Daniel, Cynthia continued. Someone with a nice family and a grandmother with a big house and money. She said this was phase 2. We just had to be careful and patient. Phase 2. Rebecca hadn't just been embezzling from our joint account. She'd been planning this from the beginning, worming her way into our family, taking control of our assets, isolating us while she systematically drained our resources. The farmhouse, my farmhouse, paid off, worth at least $500,000. The land, the accounts Thomas had left me. Rebecca had married Daniel to get access to all of it. That's why she wanted me declared incompetent, I said, the pieces clicking into place. With me out of the way and Daniel under her control, she'd have access to everything. The house, the land, my inheritance. She'd take it all and disappear again. With my college fund, Cynthia added. From my real daddy. Mommy has it in a special account. She showed me once. She said when I turned 18, if I'd been good, I could have some of it. But I knew she was lying. She was going to take it all and leave me somewhere. A knock at the door made us all jump. Through the window, I saw a police cruiser in the driveway. Daniel stood. I called them before Cynthia told us. He looked at me, then at Cynthia. What do we do? If Cynthia tells them what she told us, if she accuses Rebecca of murder, she needs to tell them, I said firmly. Cynthia, sweetheart, are you strong enough to tell the police what you told us? Cynthia nodded, but I saw fear in her eyes. Will Mommy go to jail? Yes. And that's a good thing. It means she can't hurt you anymore. But what if they don't believe me? What if they think I'm making it up like before? I knelt in front of her, taking both her small hands in mine. This time is different. This time you have us believing you. This time you have Dr. Mitchell who saw that something was wrong. This time you have all the evidence we found. You're not alone anymore, Cynthia. The knock came again, more insistent. Daniel went to answer it. 2 officers entered. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a younger man with a notebook. They introduced themselves as Officers Patricia Reeves and James Morrison. We received a call about a domestic disturbance? Officer Reeves looked around the room, taking in our tear-stained faces, the scattered papers, the obvious tension. Not a disturbance, Daniel said. A disclosure. My stepdaughter, has information about a crime. A serious crime. Officer Morrison's hand moved instinctively toward his radio. What kind of crime? Murder, I said quietly. A murder that happened 3 years ago, covered up as natural death, witnessed by a 7-year-old child who was subsequently abused into silence. The officers exchanged glances. Officer Reeves moved toward Cynthia slowly, carefully, and knelt to her level. Hi there. I'm Officer Reeves. Can you tell me your name? Cynthia. Her voice was barely audible. That's a pretty name. Cynthia, I heard you might have something important to tell us. Is that true? Cynthia looked at me. I nodded encouragingly. My mommy killed my daddy, Cynthia said, her voice growing stronger. 3 years ago. I saw her do it. She put a pillow over his face until he stopped moving. Then she told everyone his heart stopped. But it didn't. She stopped it. Officer Reeves's expression remained calm, professional, but I saw her eyes sharpen with focus. That's very brave of you to tell us, Cynthia. Can you tell me your daddy's name? Michael Barrett. We lived in Portland then. Officer Morrison was already on his radio, speaking quietly. I caught fragments. Requesting records, suspicious death, Portland jurisdiction. Officer Reeves continued her gentle questioning. And your mommy's name? Rebecca Barrett. But now she's Rebecca Miller because she married Daniel. And Cynthia hasn't spoken in 3 years, I added. since right after the CPS investigation into her father's death, an investigation that was closed when Rebecca convinced everyone that Cynthia was fantasizing. Officer Reeves stood and turned to me. "You're the grandmother?" "Yes. Corinne Miller. This is my house. Rebecca and Daniel and Cynthia moved in 2 years ago. At the time, I didn't know anything about Rebecca's first husband or the circumstances of his death. I didn't know Cynthia had been silenced. But you know now? We discovered it today, along with evidence that Rebecca has been embezzling money, forging medical documents, and planning to have me declared incompetent so she could take control of my assets." I gestured to the scattered papers. Officer Morrison began collecting them carefully, his expression growing more serious as he read. "This is complex," Officer Reeves said. "We're going to need detailed statements from all of you. We'll need to contact Portland PD about Michael Barrett's death. We'll need to bring in child services to interview Cynthia properly. And we'll need to locate Rebecca Miller immediately." "She left about 20 minutes ago," Daniel said. "She knows we've discovered the truth. She threatened to take Cynthia and disappear." Officer Morrison spoke into his radio again. "Be advised, suspect may be attempting to flee the area. Rebecca Miller, late 30s, dark hair." He looked at Daniel questioningly. "She drives a silver Honda Accord." Daniel rattled off the license plate number. "She has access to approximately $200,000 in a private account. And she has a passport. I saw it in her drawer last month. I thought it was odd at the time but didn't question it." "Issuing a bolo now," Officer Morrison said. Officer Reeves pulled out her phone. "I'm calling CPS and requesting an emergency forensic interview for Cynthia. Given the nature of the allegations and the child's age at the time of the incident, we'll need specialists. This is going to be a long night." She was right. Over the next 4 hours, our farmhouse filled with people. Child Protective Services arrived with a forensic interviewer specially trained in talking to child witnesses. Detectives from the county sheriff's office came to take our statements. Dr. Mitchell arrived. I'd texted her immediately after the police came and provided her observations about Cynthia's condition and behavior. And through it all, Cynthia sat in the living room with the forensic interviewer, a kind woman named Sandra Liu, and told her story. Every detail, every terrible moment. Her voice grew stronger with each word, 3 years of enforced silence breaking apart. I watched through the doorway as Cynthia drew pictures to illustrate what she'd seen, as she answered questions with heartbreaking clarity, as she described the conditioning Rebecca had subjected her to, the rules, the punishments, the fear. Detective Sarah Winters, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, sat with Daniel and me at the kitchen table. Portland PD pulled the file on Michael Barrett's death. It was ruled natural causes, heart failure. But there was a flag in the file. The medical examiner noted some irregularities but had no grounds to request an autopsy given the deceased's documented heart condition. And then there was the CPS report based on Cynthia's disclosure. They didn't believe her, I said. Rebecca was convincing. She had documentation of Cynthia's supposed psychological issues. She had character witnesses. She presented as a grieving widow doing her best. Detective Winters tapped her pen against her notebook. But now we have new information. Cynthia's silence for 3 years, the pattern of abuse and control, the financial fraud. It builds a picture of someone capable of murder and willing to go to extreme lengths to cover it up. Will they exhume Michael Barrett's body? Daniel asked. Portland PD is requesting a court order now. If Cynthia's account is accurate, there should be evidence. Petechial hemorrhaging, signs of asphyxiation that were missed or attributed to heart failure. Detective Winters looked at us seriously. But even if the physical evidence is degraded after 3 years, Cynthia's testimony combined with the pattern of behavior we're documenting now could be enough to charge Rebecca. If you can find her, I said. We will. She's made mistakes. The bolo is out, her bank accounts are frozen, her passport has been flagged. She won't get far. But I wasn't so sure. Rebecca had been planning this for years, had orchestrated a murder and gotten away with it, had manipulated an entire system. She was smart, careful, patient, and she was desperate. At midnight, the forensic interviewer finished with Cynthia. Sandra Liu emerged from the living room looking drained. She's an incredibly brave little girl. Her account is detailed, consistent, and compelling. I believe her. Those 3 words, I believe her, made Cynthia's face light up in a way I hadn't seen in 3 years. CPS made the decision to leave Cynthia in my custody temporarily, given that Daniel was her stepfather and not implicated in any wrongdoing, and I was her grandmother and had been instrumental in uncovering the abuse. Daniel would be supervised when interacting with Cynthia until the investigation concluded, but they agreed he'd been manipulated by Rebecca rather than complicit in her crimes. Finally, as the authorities began to leave, Detective Winters paused at the door. "Mrs. Miller, lock your doors tonight. Rebecca is cornered, and cornered people are dangerous. We have a unit watching the house, but stay vigilant." After everyone left, the 3 of us sat in the living room. Cynthia was curled against me on the couch, exhausted but unable to sleep. Daniel sat in the armchair, looking 10 years older than he had that morning. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I should have seen it. I should have protected you both." "She was very good at deception," I said. "She fooled everyone. Not you. You saw through her. Only because I paid attention, because I trusted my instincts." I stroked Cynthia's hair. "And because Cynthia was brave enough to keep fighting, even when she couldn't speak." Cynthia looked up at me. "Grandma Corinne?" "Yes, sweetheart? Can I stay here? With you? Even after Mommy goes to jail?" My throat tightened. "We'll figure it out, honey. But yes, if I have anything to say about it, you'll stay right here where you belong." She smiled, a real smile, the first I'd seen, and closed her eyes. But at 2 in the morning, that fragile peace shattered when Cynthia woke up screaming, "She's here! Mommy's here! She's in the house!" I bolted upright, my heart hammering. Cynthia was sitting up on the couch where we'd fallen asleep, her face pale in the dim light from the hallway. Daniel came running from the guest room where he'd been sleeping, his phone already in his hand. "Cynthia, are you sure?" I kept my voice calm despite the fear coursing through me. "Did you see her or did you have a nightmare?" "I heard the back door," Cynthia whispered. "The squeaky one, like when she comes home late." Daniel was already calling the police unit stationed outside. "They're checking the perimeter now," he said after a moment. "Stay here. Stay together." We waited in tense silence. Every creak of the old farmhouse made us jump. Then Daniel's phone rang. "Officers checked all doors and windows. Everything's secure. They think Cynthia had a nightmare." He looked at her apologetically. "It's understandable, sweetheart. After everything today—" "I heard it," Cynthia insisted, but doubt crept into her voice. I pulled her close. "It's okay. Even if you did hear something, the police are outside. We're safe." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I knew this house, every sound it made. And I knew Rebecca, smart, patient, calculating Rebecca. If she wanted to get inside, she'd find a way. "Daniel, check the basement," I said quietly. His eyes widened. The basement had an old coal chute, sealed years ago but never properly secured. Thomas had always meant to fix it. Daniel grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and headed down. I heard his footsteps on the wooden stairs, then silence. Too much silence. "Daniel?" I called. No answer. "Stay here," I told Cynthia, but she grabbed my hand. "Don't leave me." We went together, moving slowly down the basement stairs. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness below. I could see Daniel standing near the far wall, the beam fixed on something. The coal chute was open. "She's in the house," Daniel breathed. A voice came from the darkness behind us. "Of course I am. This is my house now." We spun around. Rebecca stood at the top of the basement stairs, silhouetted against the light from the kitchen. In her hand was something dark and cylindrical. It took me a moment to realize what it was. A tire iron from her car. "Rebecca, don't—" Daniel started up the stairs. "Stop." Her voice was deadly calm. "One more step and I'll knock you back down these stairs. The police outside will hear nothing but an old house settling. By the time they realize something's wrong, I'll be gone." "The police know everything," I said, positioning myself in front of Cynthia. "They've reopened Michael Barrett's case. They're exhuming his body. They have Cynthia's testimony. Running makes you look guilty. I am guilty. Rebecca laughed, a cold sound that echoed in the basement. But I'm not going to prison. I've worked too hard, planned too carefully. Do you know what it took to get here? Years of putting up with Michael's weakness, his constant second-guessing, his threats to cut me off. Years of playing the perfect wife while he controlled every penny. So you killed him, Daniel said. I freed myself, and I freed Cynthia from a father who was too weak to provide properly for his family. Rebecca's eyes glittered in the dim light. Then I found you, Daniel. Sweet, grieving Daniel. So eager to play hero, to save the struggling widow and her troubled child. You made it easy. You never loved me. Love? She laughed again. Love is a luxury for people who can afford it. I needed security. I needed assets. You and your mother had both. This house alone is worth a fortune, and Corinne's accounts. She looked at me. You thought you were being clever, hiding money in different investments, keeping separate accounts. But I found them all. I've been documenting everything for 2 years, preparing the guardianship case. In 6 months, maybe less, I would have had you declared incompetent, taken control of everything, and disappeared with enough money to live comfortably for life. And Cynthia? I asked. What was your plan for her? Rebecca's expression hardened. Cynthia was supposed to stay quiet. Cynthia was supposed to be obedient. Instead, she ran to you, the meddling grandmother who couldn't mind her own business. She started resisting, started showing signs of defiance. And today, her voice rose with anger. Today, she ruined everything by speaking. I'm not sorry, Cynthia said, her small voice clear in the darkness. You're bad. You killed my daddy, and you tried to kill Grandma Corinne by stealing her money and making people think she was crazy. Shut up. Rebecca took a step down. You always were too smart for your own good. That's why I had to be so careful with you, so strict. Children like you need firm boundaries, or they become problems. She's a child, not a problem, I said. And you're not taking her anywhere. I'm not here for Cynthia. Rebecca's smile was chilling. I'm here for insurance. She moved fast, launching herself down the stairs before any of us could react. But she wasn't heading for Cynthia. She was heading for me. I didn't think. 3.5 decades of teaching had given me reflexes for dealing with charging children. I stepped aside, letting Rebecca's momentum carry her past me, and stuck out my foot. Rebecca went sprawling, the tire iron clattering across the concrete floor. Daniel lunged for it, grabbing it first. Stay down, he commanded, his voice shaking, but firm. Rebecca sat up slowly, rubbing her elbow. She looked at the 3 of us, Daniel with the tire iron, me with Cynthia behind me. Cynthia peeking out with fierce determination in her eyes, and something in her expression changed. The cold calculation crumbled, revealing desperate rage beneath. You think you've won? She spat. You think this is over? I'll fight this. I'll claim Cynthia is lying, that you've coached her, that this is parental alienation. I'll drag all of you through courts for years. I'll make sure everyone knows what a crazy old woman you are, Corinne. How you manipulated your own son against his wife. You'll do nothing, I said quietly, because I've been recording everything. Rebecca froze. I pulled my phone from my pocket. The phone I'd slipped out of sleep mode the moment Cynthia woke up screaming. The phone that had been recording everything Rebecca had just confessed. You just admitted to murdering Michael Barrett, I said. You confessed to fraud, to planning financial abuse, to child abuse. You threatened us with a weapon. You broke into my home. The police outside have probably heard some of this through Cynthia's panic button. What panic button? Rebecca's face went pale. Cynthia held up her wrist, showing the medical alert bracelet the CPS worker had given her before leaving. They said if I pressed it, the police would come right away. I pressed it when Mommy started talking. Right on cue, we heard shouts from upstairs. Police! We're coming in! Rebecca's face twisted with fury. She lunged for me one last time, but Daniel caught her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. She struggled, screaming obscenities, but he held firm until officers thundered down the basement stairs. Officer Reeves appeared first, weapon drawn, taking in the scene. Everyone okay? "We're fine," I said, "but you'll want to hear this recording." The next 72 hours passed in a blur of activity. Rebecca was arrested and charged with breaking and entering, assault with a weapon, terroristic threats, and, after Portland PD completed their investigation, murder in the first degree for Michael Barrett's death. The exhumation revealed exactly what Cynthia had described: evidence of asphyxiation that had been overlooked in the original autopsy due to the deceased's documented heart condition. Cynthia's recorded testimony, combined with the forensic evidence and Rebecca's own confession captured on my phone, built an overwhelming case. Rebecca's lawyer tried to argue coercion, but the recording was clear. She'd confessed freely, even boasted about her crimes. The district attorney told us she'd likely spend the rest of her life in prison. Daniel filed for divorce immediately and began the process of legally adopting Cynthia. The court granted emergency custody to me while the case proceeded, with Daniel having supervised visitation until the adoption was finalized. CPS closed their investigation after determining that Daniel had been as much a victim of Rebecca's manipulation as anyone, deceived by a woman who'd spent years perfecting the art of deception. Dr. Mitchell became Cynthia's primary care physician and recommended a wonderful child therapist who specialized in trauma. Cynthia began weekly sessions, learning to process what she'd witnessed, to understand that none of it was her fault, to reclaim her voice. And what a voice it was. Once Cynthia started speaking again, she barely stopped. 3 years of words came pouring out, questions about everything, stories she'd kept locked inside, observations about the world around her. She talked about her real father, her memories of Michael Barrett as a kind man who'd read her stories and made her laugh. She talked about the fear she'd lived with, the rules she'd memorized, the constant vigilance required to avoid Rebecca's punishments. But she also talked about hope, about feeling safe, about loving her new life with me and Daniel in the farmhouse. A month after Rebecca's arrest, I sat on the front porch watching Cynthia play in the yard. She was chasing butterflies, her laughter carrying on the spring breeze. Daniel sat beside me, his own healing evident in the relaxation of his shoulders, the ease of his smile. "I've been thinking," he said, "about selling the house." My heart clenched. Daniel, not this house, my house, the one I owned before I met Rebecca. It's been rented out for 2 years, but the lease is up. If I sell it, I could pay you back some of what Rebecca stole. Not all of it, but keep your house, I said firmly. Rent it out or sell it for Cynthia's future. What Rebecca took was money, Daniel. Just money. What you've both given me is family. She nearly destroyed us. Nearly, but she didn't. We're still here, still standing, still together. I watched Cynthia spin in circles, her arms outstretched. That little girl is speaking, laughing, healing. You're free from a marriage built on lies. And I paused, choosing my words carefully. I discovered that being older doesn't mean being weaker. It means having the patience to watch and wait, the wisdom to recognize patterns, the courage to act when the moment is right. Daniel reached over and squeezed my hand. "You saved us, Mom. Both of us." "No, we saved each other. That's what families do." Cynthia ran up to the porch, breathless and bright-eyed. "Grandma, there's a butterfly on the roses. Come see." I let her pull me from my chair, marveling at the transformation in this child. From silent and haunted to vibrant and free in just a few weeks. Healing would take time, years probably, but she was on the right path. As we walked toward the rose garden Thomas had planted years ago, Cynthia slipped her small hand into mine. "Grandma Corinne, can I ask you something?" "Anything, sweetheart." "Are you going to die soon? Like Grandpa Thomas? Because you're old?" Daniel started to interrupt, but I waved him off. "Well, I'm 64, which is old to you, but not terribly old in the grand scheme of things. I plan to stick around for quite a while yet." "Why do you ask?" "Because I need you." She looked up at me with complete trust. "Who else is going to teach me to be brave and smart like you?" My throat tightened with emotion. "Oh, Cynthia, you're already brave. You survived 3 years of something no child should ever have to endure. You found ways to communicate even when you couldn't speak. You held on to hope even in the darkest moments. That's not something I taught you. That's something you already had inside you. But you helped me find it. And you helped me remember that age isn't about how many years you've lived. It's about what you do with the wisdom those years give you. I knelt to her level. Do you know what I learned through all of this? Cynthia shook her head. I learned that patience is more powerful than force. That watching and listening can reveal more than demanding answers. That sometimes the strongest thing you can do is wait for the right moment to act. I touched her cheek gently. Your mother was younger, faster, more willing to use violence. But in the end, none of that mattered. What mattered was wisdom, preparation, and love. Cynthia hugged me tight. I love you, Grandma Corin. I love you too, sweetheart. That evening, after Cynthia was asleep in her room, the room we'd redecorated together, filling it with colors and chaos and all the personality a 7-year-old should be allowed to express, Daniel and I sat in the kitchen with cups of tea. The prosecutor called, he said. Rebecca's pleading guilty to avoid trial. She doesn't want Cynthia to have to testify. Merciful of her. The prosecutor thinks she just doesn't want her confession played in open court. But whatever the reason, it means Cynthia won't have to relive it all again. That's good. I sipped my tea. And the financial restitution? She's agreed to return what's left of the embezzled money. It's not all of it. She spent quite a bit. But it's something. Plus, the court is awarding us Michael Barrett's estate since Cynthia is his heir. Apparently, Rebecca never actually inherited it. Michael's will left everything to Cynthia, held in trust until she turned 18. Rebecca was only supposed to be the trustee, but she'd been treating it as her own money. How much? $300,000, plus the life insurance payout she fraudulently obtained. All of it goes to Cynthia now. I set down my cup. That child is going to have a secure future. Thanks to you. If you hadn't investigated, if you hadn't trusted your instincts, if Cynthia hadn't been brave enough to keep fighting in her own way, none of this would have worked. I looked at my son. We're all part of this story, Daniel. All of us contributed to the ending. He nodded, then smiled. A real smile, the kind I hadn't seen on his face in years. I like this ending. Me too. Outside, the spring evening settled over the farmhouse. The fields Thomas had loved stretched into the distance. The oak trees he'd planted standing sentinel. This house had seen births and deaths, joys and sorrows, celebrations and tragedies. Now it would see healing. Cynthia's voice would ring through these halls. Daniel would rebuild his life, wiser and stronger for what he'd survived. And I would continue being what I'd always been, a teacher, a protector, a grandmother who understood that real strength came not from youth or force, but from wisdom earned through years of living, learning, and loving. Rebecca had underestimated all of us, but especially me. She'd seen an elderly woman and assumed weakness. She'd seen kindness and assumed naivety. She'd seen patience and assumed passivity. She couldn't have been more wrong. Sometimes the quietest power is the most dangerous. Sometimes watching and waiting achieves more than rushing in. Sometimes the wisdom of age outsmarts the arrogance of youth. And sometimes, just sometimes, a grandmother's love is the strongest force of all. I finished my tea and stood, moving to the window. In the moonlight, I could see the rose garden, the fields beyond, the sturdy frame of the old farmhouse standing as it had for 200 years. This was my legacy now. Not just a house, but a sanctuary. A place where a silent child had found her voice, where truth had triumphed over deception, where family had proven stronger than manipulation. Mom? Daniel's voice was soft. Thank you. For everything. I turned and smiled at my son. You're welcome. Now go get some rest. Tomorrow we start the real work, building a life without lies, teaching Cynthia that she's safe, showing her that family means never having to be silent again. He hugged me goodnight and headed upstairs. I stood alone in the quiet kitchen, listening to the sounds of my farmhouse settling for the night. But it wasn't just the house settling. It was all of us, settling into our new reality, our new beginning, our second chance. Cynthia was speaking. Daniel was healing. Rebecca was facing justice. And I was exactly where I belonged, doing exactly what I was meant to do, being the wise, patient, loving force that held everything together, being the grandmother who saved her family by trusting her instincts and refusing to give up, being proof that age is not weakness, but power. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.